you down. Hold it in and breathe it out. 'Cause it's our time.
Hello and welcome to another edition of KGUP Presents on Indie TV, channel 140 on the Universe Network. I'm your host, Mikey J. Today, KGUP Presents is honored to have our guest today. She's from our own backyard, right here in the mecca of pop and alternative music, and that, of course, is Hollywood, California. Our featured artist today is Defoe. You might recognize a few of Defoe's songs, including Picture and Something's Happening, now playing on KGUP FM. And due to the sights and sounds of her music videos and the tracks itself, we couldn't go without having this talented artist on our show. Please welcome Angela of Defoe. I thought that the music video was just amazing.
Thank you.
It was so different from all the music that I've heard or even played, and it just had this this drum beat that was just
insane.
Yeah.
Totally non-conventional. And that shouldn't work.
At first, I didn't think it would be, that receptive. But if you really listen to it and you eliminate all the distractions, it's an amazing song.
Thank you.
Yeah. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now that you're obviously have spent many years crafting your work, it definitely shows. Tell us how it all started.
Well, since I was about 3 to 4 years old, this Christmas we were able to pull out some old videotapes of me, and I have a son who's about 3 years old, so I wanted to watch some of the videos when I was a kid. I was singing and making up songs, kind of freestyle since I was a kid. You couldn't get me to stop singing. It was hours and hours of videotape. So when I was a kid, I really wanted to be an opera singer or a Disney singer. And I mean, with a kid mind, that's as far as you go. I didn't know what an artist was. I did like Whitney Houston and stuff like that. But my parents really helped me out by letting me be weird, letting me pick out my outfits. If I wanted to sing and dance and bang a drum, they would never stop me, even at a restaurant, which is unheard of now. But they really didn't pull me back. So I think that really helps as a parent to not pull back your kid to discover their inner creativity. And so that was that. And then when I was about in my teens, I had a friend who bought a program called Magic Maker or Music Maker from Walmart, and then he would make beats, and I'd be like, oh, they're okay. And I was like, okay, can I borrow your computer one day and make something? So I did, and I made, to me at that time, a masterpiece, and his computer crashed. And from that moment on, I still have that track. I'm never going to share it with the world. Maybe when I die, I'll send it to you first.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it was amazing, and I thought it was so cool how easy it was to make songs that you just come up with chords, and when you have melodies that come in your mind, you can put it to a horn section or a string section, and they just kind of mesh together. And I knew then I liked making music, and from that moment on, I took it a little bit more seriously.
Our tastes, kind of evolve over time. So, do you have any specific artists that you like that are current?
There's one person I really respect and kind of look up to. I just recently discovered, and he's been out for a while, and I didn't make the connection, but his artist name is Arca. His music videos are just so controversial, but for a reason. Shock factor, not just shock factor for shock factor's sake, but for a reason. And he's very he was a what I liked about him is he was a producer first. He produced a lot of albums for Bjork, and I love Bjork.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. He started off as a producer like I did, and then decided to become an artist later. And I think that what he's coming up with is just so beautiful. Like when I hear people be creative and do really artsy stuff, when I hear the music, I'm like, oh, it's okay, but the video carries it. But no, the music is beautiful. The video is beautiful, and he's just super androgynous, and I really think what he's doing is really cool and cutting edge.
Very nice.
What's good, everybody? For E-Tech Rentals, I'm HR Cole, here to tell you about E-Tech Rentals charging stations. If you guys have a live event, a concert, or anything in between where you guys have a lot of people who are coming in wanting to charge their phones, check out etechrentals.com. They have these beautiful charging stations. This is a brand new wireless charging station on top of having all the ports that you connect your different types of device. It doesn't matter if it's iPhone, Android, even a Windows phone. If you guys have it, it's here available for you. Make sure you guys go to etechrentals.com for any live event that you have. I mean, they have charging stations, iMacs, notebooks, laptops, and a whole lot more. etechrentals.com. Check them out. E-Tech Rentals is a proud sponsor of the Holly Shorts Film Festival.
So I read that you went to MI, or Musicians Institute.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you?
Well, it was an amazing experience. I loved it so much. At that time I was living in LA, Hollywood. I lived very close to MI. Had a lot of friends going in and out of MI, and I never really considered it. But then one day I was like, why not? I'm making music production. I might as well master my craft. And I went in there and I realized I didn't know anything, so I learned about the science of sound, different sine waves and how they react to each other, psychoacoustics, how to make sounds sound like it's coming from behind you, even if it's just two speakers, and just panning, compression, sidechain compression. It was just really humbling, but I really loved it because when it came to just typical elementary, high school, middle school, I was never the best I was never a valedictorian, but I did excel in certain classes that I liked, but it was really cool to know that I was the top of my class at MI, and when they asked you to turn in one song for a project, I turned in 3, and it was cool. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a whole lot about music production, and I transitioned from Ableton Live, which was my first, the DAW I was working on for a couple of years, to Pro Tools, which is very important for me because it's kind of industry standard, and I can work with other music engineers, studios, and be able to communicate with them appropriately. So they really helped me a lot. Definitely, I agree.
So you went to a Music Institute. Would you recommend it for artists that are, up and coming and wanting to explore music?
I would recommend it only if you have, like, say if you wanted to do the RIT program, which is music engineering, or like bass or something like that, if you have been kind of tinkering around for a couple of years with it, like you've already kind of learned some of the basics and you've kind of went through the trials and tribulations and have been creating already and kind of working in that field. Because if you don't, then you're just basically learning the basics. You're not taking advantage of the ear of these really wonderful people who are working in the industry. Like, there's so many times where I was working on personal projects and I got to pull them aside and be like, hey, how do you chain compress this with this sound? And I want this one to always be in the forefront when there's so much going on. They would always be really happy to answer my questions, and I wish I had that now. I really have to just kind of like figure it out. But that was so valuable to me, so I do recommend MI. But if you really want to take it serious, because it's money, I'd say just tinker around, make sure that's the instrument or DAW or whatever that you want to do, and know a little bit about it, like the basics, because wasting your time on just learning the basics on that school, there's so much more that could be learned. So,
good advice. So let's talk about your music. The song that we originally caught our attention was Picture. We saw a little snippet of your music video for that song. It's very sexy. The production is just incredible. Can you walk us through the writing and the production process?
So one day I woke up and I felt extra cheeky, and I wanted to kind of like convey that. I was like, I have like this mood that I'm never really in. I felt like, so I went in front of my computer and I picked I listened to the BPM, and I just picked a BPM that felt right. So I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. And then I grabbed my guitar and I always start off really simple, and I just hit one note, ding, 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 ding. I was like, okay, that's great. It's kind of bass-liney and it's on a guitar, but so what? There's not really any rules. That's what's so great about it. And so I just kind of chilled with that a little bit, and I listened to it. I put my headphones on while I was still in the mood. You can't break that fog that you're in. Once that song creates a life, then it created a life. And I just entered into that fog, stayed in it, had my eyes closed, came up to the mic. I don't care what was coming out of my mouth, but I just kind of sang, I got your picture here, And I was like, whoa, okay, this is definitely creating something, and I gotta catch up before it runs away from me. So at that moment, that song already had like a breathing life, and it had its wants and needs and its dislikes. So I had to listen to what it wanted, and I just served it. And after that, I made 2 verses right away, and it was awesome. Ronnie jumped on, my husband, Ronnie Winter from the Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, jumped on the drums. We made some drums, but I struggled with the chorus. So for months, I had like 5 different choruses of that song, and it just didn't feel right. It felt passable, but you don't want to make something passable. You want to make something awesome, Right. And so it took me a while to find that awesome. And finally, I came up with a chorus, and still to this day, I get random musicians who are like, oh my gosh, that chorus, like there's a really cool chord change. It's so unexpected, but it works, and it's amazing. And I don't write music, so I'm like, oh, it's all intuitive, thanks. That's cool that I made something kind of to them, like, I don't know what the word is, but cool, awesome, groundbreaking, I don't know. But so that's how that song came to be.
So like I mentioned that you have a teaser out. Do you plan on like finishing the music video?
Yeah, that's a song that we're definitely going to be making a music video for. Definitely.
Yeah, so much time had passed, I didn't realize that there wasn't a full video.
Well, I did something fun. For the first song that I did, In Other Words, we just did a quick like guerrilla style music video with friends, and it was a nice thing for me to get used to making videos. And we had a lot of B-roll, and I was like, we had to make it black and white because there was a couple technical difficulties, but I loved the colors. So I was like, well, we have all this B-roll, I might as well make like a little teaser for the video, for the song. And it turned out okay, but that's all the footage I had. But we plan on making like a really badass video for that.
Nice. Now, when you released Something's Happening, I literally just slapped together a video and featured you the very next morning.
That was so awesome. Thank you. I was like, what?
Yeah, like it was so simplistic, but it looked like there was a lot of production. I don't know how else to explain it.
That's perfect, actually.
But it had this like tribal sound, and it was kind of eerie and mesmerizing. And from beginning to end, I was just captivated.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, how are we gonna hold their attention on this video? I'm like sitting here doing this the whole time. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm glad you made it to the end.
Yeah. So, whose idea was to direct and like produce the video?
Well, I knew that song was special. First of all, that song, the reason why it sounds so weird and unconventional is because it was a part of a score that I did for an indie director named Dylan Reynolds. He was so kind and totally trusted, and someone who's never scored a film before, to let me score a film. Like I was like, hey, please give me a shot. Like, let me just give me half of the film and give me 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, I gave him like a rough of the full, like a score of half the film. He's like, I got a pay raise. He's like, keep on going. We love it. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna get an IMDb credit. And so that was so cool. And I just remember that there was a chase scene, and I'm not really I'm scared of horrors, but I do like them, but I don't like them, but my imagination's too good. Like, I get scared at night, like it lasts with me for months. So, but I know how to make sound creepy, you know, so it's kind of easier to do than pretty. So there's a scene where a creature, if you will, was chasing the main character through the woods. And I was like, okay, so this is the peak where everyone has to be like, oh my gosh. So I was like, okay, let's do double bass. Let's freaking put tribal drums to represent the trees. Let's do ooh, kind of like, well, inspired by this one artist. And I was like, okay, this is it. And I got my recorder, which is a flute, and went and found a good sweet spot. I was like, okay, this isn't too terrible, but this makes sense. Put it in there, repeated it. And I was like, okay, cool. Oh, violin. I had a violin. I was like, it's so easy to make horror sounds on a violin than pretty sounds. Let me tell you. So that was a cheat.
Nice.
And so after making that, it was really effective. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. There's something about it. And so as a producer, music engineer, artist, I like to challenge myself and be like, can I make this into a song? Like, you can make anything and you never have to show anyone anything. So that's the secret. So make something not thinking someone's gonna hear it. And then if it's good, then show them. If you don't, no one will ever have to know.
Yeah.
So it ended up being good. So I couldn't think of anyone better to direct it than the director of 420 Massacre. That's still playing on the movie channel, Cinemax, still going. My dad calls me in the middle of the night. He's 87, would never watch 420 Massacre, a horror slasher pot film. And he calls me like 3 times a day, being like, it's on again. I'm like, I was excited, and then now it's like, okay, Dad. He's like, I'm watching the whole thing, and I'm like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it makes him happy, and it's cool. So he was obviously the choice.
Welcome to Indie TV, and welcome to the show that brings you new indie music videos always. This is the Indie Spotlight Countdown Weekly Top 10. What's good, everybody? I'm your man, HR Cole, and on this special edition, we're bringing you a bit more insight on some of the indie artists in rotation here on Indie TV with our 20 of 2019.
music. I remember a time real artists had to prove it. I want a serenade from the sound of Sade. Matter of fact, I want the horns from DOA. I want that Crown Royal if Jill Scott is pouring. And I want that movie music if the Wizard is scoring. And while we on it, give me the whole rule. Frankie Beverly and Mays, the Fugees too. Cause I imagine John Lennon would be involved. Jay Hudson with the Star Spangled Banner at the kickoff. Brandy with the pick-off. Jimmy picking chords. Anita Baker singing me the sweetest joy. I want that tribe kind of from the...
So your writing in general, does it kind of work that way, where you just have like an epiphany and you just start writing, or how does it work for you?
Well, for me, it's completely very intuitive. I have a minimal ability to read and write music. It's all intuitive. For me, when I know something's good, like literally like a light in my brain or something smiles inside of my soul that says it's right. If it's okay, then there's nothing. Then no, you need to have that green internal green light. You know,
Right.
If it's wrong, even there's this cool study that even babies know if there's a wrong note in a song. So I'm like, it's in us. We know. Not necessarily if you're singing, because you can't really hear yourself when you sing. There's too much vibrations up in your cavity and stuff like that. But so what I do is I start with a feeling, and then I start either with a chord. I listen to a note and be like, is this vibing with me right now? Yes, it is. And then I find a chord, and I'm like, okay, that chord's great. And usually I find a second chord to go with it, and then I just kind of record and I lay back and listen to it, and then I just enter into this fog and safe space. No one's there to judge you, and I just keep on going and adding until that green light keeps on coming. And if there's no light, then I scrap it. Next one. So it's all just intuitive, and you never know. But whenever the song develops into a certain part, which is usually chords, one quick little melody, it's its own beast. So it wants to be fed something. So if you try to force electric guitar on something, it's going to spit it back out at you. It's like, no, this is not an electric guitar song, okay? And I'm like, okay, song, okay, what do you want? Do you want this? Do you want this? Like, I'm a slave. But it's fun, and I love it. It's so cool to create something that's invisible, you know, and it's speaking to you.
It's funny, you've mentioned fog a couple of times, and you say it in a very positive way. You normally, when someone has a fog, it's negative. It's because they can't think straight.
Oh yeah, it's true. I can't think straight when I'm in this moment. So me and my husband that we're driving here, we're talking about that fog, because we relate. We're both creative people, and it's funny because when you're in that fog, you can use it as such a positive thing. But getting out of that fog and going back to regular life, say for the studio, and you're driving home, you see all these cars, like, oh my gosh, there's people in those cars. They have lives. Like, okay, I need to ground myself. So at that time, I call a friend and talk about their problems, or just you have to ground yourself after and be back down to earth. So I need to do a lot of grounding things, and usually grounding things is not like a spiritual thing with like a rock on your feet. It's more like just connecting with people.
Right.
So I think it's important after to immediately connect with people.
So let's go back to your music. So earlier last year, you released your EPs, Too Soon to Cry. We know about Picture and Something's Happening, but walk us through like the rest of the album. If you could define your release in one statement, what would you want people to know?
Well, I knew that this first album, I wanted a full-length album because I really wanted it to be just eclectic. I didn't want to put myself in a box for future releases, because once you put something out that all sounds a certain way, they expect you for it to sound that way. And I'm just a really, I guess, emotional person, sensitive person. Every day I feel a little different depending on the dream that I had that night.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to be able to control what kind of music that I had. So I would say every song is definitely it's great driving music, like say if you're driving at night in the desert, or in this, just not going to a club though. That's not the kind of music. But it's really just emotional and moody and just beautiful. I wanted every single waveform, every single transient of the wave to be just gorgeous and well placed. And I did. I made sure. I was very crazy about that. And yeah, the album title is called Too Soon to Cry because it's almost like a joke. It's funny. Like, where if you are watching a movie next to somebody new or somebody and it's a sad part and you try not to cry and you have that ball in your throat and like you're holding back the tears, you're like, it's too soon to cry, I gotta make it to the bathroom before I cry, you know. So it's like that time where we don't feel like it's okay to cry in public, or you want to cry in private. That moment right there, that's what Too Soon to Cry is. And that's why I named the album that. I thought it was just really funny. What do you have planned for this year? There's a lot happening. This end of this month in January, 2020, we are filming a music video for one of my favorite songs on the album called Black Metal Romance with the director Joey Danger. He's just really amazing. It's cool because he loved the song before I released it. I did like a soft little mini release like on SoundCloud for my friends. He stumbled upon it years ago. He was like, I love this song, you need to become an artist, you're gonna kill it, I don't know how you're not big now. And I was like, that's really sweet, that's cool. And I looked onto his stuff and I was like, wow, he's an amazing director and an artist too. Like he does CGI stuff, like just mind-blowing. Wow. So I approached him one day and I was like, I don't know if this is gonna happen, but he was down, he was excited. So I'm excited, everybody's really excited about this project. It's gonna be a cool music video. Well, Defoe, it was absolute pleasure having you on the show, KGUP Presents. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much. We went a little over, but the podcast will play everything. Okay. But thank you for being here. It's great having you here. For all our watchers and listeners, where can we find your music? You can find it, I have a website, What is Defoe, Facebook, What is Defoe, Instagram, What is Defoe, iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify. It's pretty much everywhere. That's a very interesting handle, What is Defoe, instead of, the usual. It's like a Jeopardy question. The answer is, what is Defoe? I've had that for a long time, and they're like, it works. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Because I own it. How did you come up with that name? Well, I just don't. Maybe you have the answer for me. I know for Jeopardy, to answer the question correctly, to get a point, you have to say, what is Defoe? You have to put it into a form of a question. Even if you get it right, but don't say that, I guess you don't get it right. Why? Yeah. Why? Do you know? Does anybody know? So it's open to interpretation, just like I'd said. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me here and having it.